All right, so I thought it'd be fun to make a video about the electronics in the car. I've been getting some questions and lately that have been popping up, and I thought it hit me. I haven't really done an overview of everything, so I thought I'd just do as quick of an overview as I can, give a taste of it, and you guys let me know if you have any specific questions or want to know more. But just to recap, so the car's powered by Link ECU, their G4X Extreme series, and then so that's for the engine, controlling the engine, and then the whole rest of the cars run off an AIM PDM, so a PDM 32, and then various parts or various other add-ons are connected via CAN bus to communicate. So under the dash, there's a Bosch Motorsport ABS, so I get wheel speeds from that, and of course all the various parts from your ABS system. And then I have a Blink Marine keypad here to control various parts of the PDM, like power on, off, start the car, change modes, control lights, stuff like that. I have a CAN bus module here for the steering wheel. It's a wireless CAN steering wheel made by Freewheel. This gives me some controls. Basically does the same thing as that, but on the steering wheel. So mine, controls slip and throttle pedal settings. I can turn on the hazards, turn signals, tell people to get out of the way by flashing my brights at them, stuff like that. And then everything comes through here with the dash here. And I do have one more device connected on CAN bus, and that's a TPMS sensor. So I can see tire pressure, so everything. So that's a quick overview. And I thought I'd go through some of the parts of why you want to do this, if you can, on a race car versus utilizing OEM stuff. Really good timing on the motion lights. Give me a sec. All right, now that the lights are back on. So, back to what I was saying. One of the things I thought would be great is to go over why this is such an awesome setup to do, whether you do it through Link and AIM like I have, or Motec or whatever, and kind of the advantages over OEM. So you can get a custom dash like this with your stock setup, whether you're using your stock ECU and your control or your fuse box and all that kind of stuff, body harness, all that kind of stuff. But where the real flexibility comes in is programming. So basically a PDM turns into a if this then that programming deal. So basically you could say, if this happens, then go do this thing. And it's unlimited in the sense of you can take any input, whether it be you've seen this temperature, now go do this thing. So anything that's connected to it can control it. It just gives so much flexibility. And then when you pair it with the CAN bus to the ECU, you can start doing things between the two and all the things connected. So here's a good example. On the steering wheel here, we have as mentioned, I have my traction control settings, my accelerator pedal settings. So basically, what map do I want for the throttle pedal? Do I want it a little lazy? Do I want it kind of normal? Or do I want it to be very direct, like cable driven, where it's 1-to-1? And so if we go over here to the ECU, I'm connected to the ECU here. So if I flip one switch here, you'll see that this table just went, what was active before, the traction control switch just went to inactive, meaning the disable switch is no longer active. And then now I'm on position 1. And so if I go to the actual traction control table, you can see here, this is the table. And basically what it's doing is saying for each one of these gears, when we're in this row, so in this case we're in row labeled 1 here, we have 12% in 1, first gear, 10% in second gear, 8% in third gear, and so on. That's how much slip the ECU will allow to happen before it engages traction control and starts managing torque. And I can change that on the fly. So when I'm out on track, I can flip a switch and say, you know what, actually, I'm going fast today. I feel good. I have good tire grip. Everything feels good. So I want a little more. Or maybe you're really willing to throw it around and you want to go all the way down here to row 3. I've only set up 3. I can set up more if I want, but basically, and then this one, it'll allow up to 6% slip in first gear, etc. So this is all done by programming this to communicate with the PDM, and then the PDM communicates with the ECU. So basically, this runs on CAN 2 of the PDM, which is CAN bus 2, and then the PDM takes that signal, which it gets as it translates to a 0, 1, 2, 3, basically a digital rotary switch, right? Position 1, position 2, position 3, and then it passes that number onto the ECU, and then I have the ECU program to interpret that number and translate it to a row on the table here. all done through programming. This is stuff that is really, it's overwhelming at first when you don't know how it all works, but once you get used to it, you realize it's actually literally just a bunch if this then that statements, which makes it a lot more approachable. Another thing too is I have, I mentioned throttle pedal here. So, or accelerator pedal. And basically what this does is it allows me to change how the throttle feels. So, if you're running a stock Mustang, you've experienced normal mode, sport mode, and rain mode. And basically what I've done is I've created the track-oriented versions of those. And so right now it defaults to the first table, which looks a lot like this isn't the actual first table, but it looks a lot like it. And as you can see, basically, depending on the RPM, which is up here, and what percentage of the throttle pedal, the accelerator pedal is being pushed, is what it's actually doing. So we can see here at 50%, it's 50% on this particular table, but at 10%, you're actually only getting 7%, right? And so what this is basically doing is it allows you to tune the throttle pedal feel to where you're actually making power. So you can change it so it's more sensitive at low RPM and less sensitive at high RPM, or however you want it to set it up to make it feel as linear as possible or as punchy as possible, whatever you want. But where this comes in handy is you can change it depending on conditions. And so if you look down here to this guy, let me see if I can make it a little bigger. There you go. You can see this is my wet table. So you can see here at 30% when I've pushed the pedal in 30%, it's actually only giving me 15% throttle. And then by the time we get up to 60, it's a little closer at 45%. And then, of course, by 100, it's at 100. But the idea here is in the rain, you want more dexterity or fidelity in the pedal at lower RPM than you do at higher RPM, because you don't want it to be so sensitive to when you're trying to manage slip in the wet. So you could rely entirely on traction control, but obviously you don't have control all the time with traction, right? You've set basically a preset table and said, all right, now manage it to that. So here, this allows me to maybe dial down traction control a little bit, but make the pedal a little more, like it just feel more right when you're in the rain. Or alternatively, like this one, this is far more closer to a 1-to-1 where you're getting, at 50, you're getting 50, 60, you're getting 60, etc. So that, if I'm really feeling the car, I want a really snappy, aggressive pedal, I can do that. Or I have my normal pedal, which is, just a normal feel. But what's great here is you see throttle table target 2, throttle 1 target 3. And so if I change the switch, so right now it has that first table selected. If I go to 2, you'll see that it's activated target 2, which would highlight that first table I showed you. And then if I flip it to 3, it goes to table 3. So I get a change, just like the OEM setup that came from Ford, I get to change all that. I get that different pedal feel, all that kind of stuff, but I'm programming it. So I get to control how that feels, so I can give it a more direct thing. And don't get me wrong, this doesn't just make the throttle more sensitive. This is actually changing the way it revs, it gives you a lot more feel of the engine, not just if you tap the throttle, it's more sensitive for a shorter amount of pedal pressure. So I really like that. Some other things here, I have a pit limiter here. So if I hit this pit switch, you can see it's activated this speed limit switch. That's what the software calls the pit limiter function. Basically, within here, you go into the speed settings, which is under engine protection. And you can see here, I have it set up where 20 miles an hour is what's set right now. But basically, it activates a speed limiter that uses RPM and like an RPM cut to manage your speed. And so that's how you get that really cool pit limiter sound, where it bounces off the rev limiter in a weird way, where it retards timing, limits the throttle blade opening. It does a whole bunch of really cool stuff. But basically, once I flip that switch, it limits it, and then I hit it one more time and it turns off. So that's how I have a pit speed limiter. super cool. Another one here is I have the reset button. And so, if I go out on track, if I make changes, it's not uncommon when you program and do a bunch of stuff to throw a fault code, because you've changed stuff around, maybe while the engine's running or while the ECU is on, but the engine isn't running, throws a fault code. And it's very common, at least for me, to accidentally forget to clear the codes on the computer before I disconnect it. And so what happens is I get in the car, I go out on track, and right here, there's a little check engine light popped up letting me know that there's a fault code, but I don't have any way to kill it or clear it. So what I've done is I've programmed this that when I do a short press like this, it resets any alarms that the PDM throws and is communicating at me. That might be something's over temperature or whatever, but basically something the dash is warning me about. But if I hold it long, you can see there, it's triggered an ECU fault code reset, which is that guy right there. So super cool, tons of programming. That's some stuff I did just on the engine side. There's all kinds of other stuff, as I mentioned, like, with my turn signals, so I can control turn signals. Oh, it's not showing you. I guess it shows out the back. So stuff like that. Here I have the ABS switch. So, I have, I think it's like 12 different levels of ABS control. So I can go all the way down to like 3 where it doesn't allow much ABS, or it doesn't allow much slip at all under braking. So it's really aggressive. This is really great when you're in really wet or damp conditions. Or I can go all the way up into like 9, 10, where if it's super sunny, the track is super grippy, the ABS doesn't intervene as much and allows me to get really on that edge of right before you start to lock up. And, it's less forgiving, but helps a lot. And then, of course, also I have TPMS sensors here. So I basically have 3 sets of TPMS sensors for my 3 sets of wheels, and basically you just got to make sure you put the right sensor in the right location. It doesn't auto-correct like a stock setup, but it gives me the pressure, and I can set warnings, so it'll tell me what wheel. I can have it tell me if it's too low and I'm out on track, so I can make these blue, if they're below 20 psi like they are now, or alternatively I can make this flash red at me if they get above like 33 and I know they're going to get slippery. So I have tons of control. Some other stuff, like I have a rear camera, which I changed the settings. Let me see which one it is. There we go. So not coming in super clear because it's washed out, but I have a rear camera for being in the pits, stuff like that. So there's just so much cool stuff you can do with CAN and the programming and all the if this then that statements. It's awesome. Highly recommend. Let me know if you have any questions. I can record more. And let you guys know if you want to see how the programming works or anything like that. Just let me know. The only thing I will say is it's a rabbit hole and there's no quick way to show it. But it is really cool. And if it's something you're interested, I'm happy to record something.